Namaste and welcome to Forest Yogin Talks. Today we're going to talk about masculine and feminine energy principle. And this is not going to be really talked about in a Tibetan way or an Indian way. Culturally relative to us in Canada and the West. And very pithy, bare bones, distilled down to its essence. Right? Culturally relative to us. Alright, so the feminine energy principle is wisdom itself. Infinite cognizant space, it's the mind's natural state, and it moves around without notice. The masculine energy principle is the skillful means, the action, and it's linear. So we work to balance these in yoga and meditation. And in general, most men are mostly masculine energy principle and most women are mostly feminine. Not always. Some men are mostly feminine and vice versa. It doesn't necessarily correlate to sexual orientation. But the person with more masculine energy principle would work to balance and bring in the feminine and vice versa. The optimal spot is different for different activities. Like if I go climbing, take people climbing, more masculine because I'm trying to see that the knots are right, load-bearing knots, redundant systems, backup systems, and 3-inch tails on the knots, and all these little things. That's more masculine. If I'm going for an ice cream, just on a Sunday drive, that's more feminine. And if I get to the point where we have to get to the ice cream stand at 1 o'clock or all is lost, that's wound too tight, which is the pitfall of too much masculine energy. The pitfall of too much feminine energy is lost in space, no action at all. Optimally, we're awakening to our nature to help guide others. So I have a little drawing here, a little PowerPoint presentation. So you can see on this side we have feminine, on this side we have masculine. Extremes are poison, and included in the extremes are the wound too tight and lost in space. You can see that most of us are in between these brackets here, in this general area, and this is balance, and that moves with the activity, with the whatever manifests naturally. We have to check with the feminine to see where to apply the skillful means, or if to apply them. A lot of times we apply stuff and energy that's wasted. So when we learn to spend more time in the feminine energy principle, we don't fatigue our intellect. We can't see these wisdoms and the natures that play in our intellect, but you develop a post-intellectual state where you're residing mostly in the feminine and only going to the masculine when it's needed. There's nothing wrong with the intellect, but you're really only going when it's needed. As a result, your intellect is rested, it's vast, it's boundless, and it's sharp. But if it's always fatigued, like it can be for us in the West, it's none of those. So the other thing is, I'll be talking about union karma later, and I'll refer to this. If you're here on the little continuum, then you're drawn to someone that's here. If you're here, you're drawn to someone that's here. It's the same distance on the other side of the balance point. And the point is, union karma is to balance, to get to unite the bliss and the wisdom, to unite the space, to bring the formless back to the form, to bring what we see in our mind's nature back to the world, and so on. And, I talk in day retreats, and day retreats usually get a gasp when I talk about, the pitfall for the feminine. Too much feminine energy principle is lost in space. Usually the women gasp or giggle or laugh. And, the men, there's not usually as many men here in the West, but they kind of, their approach is wound too tight. And sometimes their approach to even yoga is wound too tight in general, like it's more academic. None of this stuff is academic. You should never take an academic approach to any of this at all. The intellect will not recognize the higher wisdoms, the subtlest teachings. It's a diving board and there's nothing wrong with it, but it will not recognize the higher teachings. I think there was a Buddha here in the central land of Kalapa a couple of years ago, and he said, if you ask the thinking mind these questions and you're talking about spiritual, he said, you're asking the wrong department. I thought that was hilarious. And if you're too much if you're wound too tight, if you're taking notes and not letting go and absorbing the teachings, basically, he said something else. He said, if you're wound too tight, you lose your humor. And if you lose your humor, you lose your love. So, feminine energy principle is the infinite cognizant space. It moves around without notice. The masculine is linear, and it's the action. It's the balance of the both. Very important in yoga and dharma. We're resolving karma, we're gaining merit, we're balancing the energy principles. Alright, I hope this helps. Namaste, and thanks for watching us here.